Now, what I'm excited for is to dig into what we have planned. First, we're going to hear from Mark Gramelspacher with Elevate Ventures. Mark, incredible investor, Elevate doing some tremendous work. They're the most active venture capital firm here in the Midwest. And Mark's going to share with us their approach to the ag bioscience economy and accelerating the ag bioscience economy, what they're doing in venture. And then he's going to introduce us to one of Indiana's hottest ag tech companies, ag bioscience companies. It's Marketwagon. And Marketwagon CEO, Nick Carter, is going to join us. Nick's going to walk us through what he and his team at Marketwagon are doing to connect farm production directly to consumers and how COVID-19 and the pandemic have created maybe new opportunity for Nick. We'll hear from him. And then we'll move into a panel discussion on what does the pandemic mean for the ag bioscience economy, specifically here in Indiana. What does it look like? What can we learn? And typically, where are there opportunities for us to accelerate out of the pandemic itself? I think there's lots of opportunity, and we're going to hear from three really bright leaders who have spent a lot of time studying. Hear from Rob Donkowski, Ernst & Young. He leads the entire business group for food and agriculture, Ernst & Young. He's an incredible leader. His team were co-authors of a recent report that AgriNovus published called Resilience Through Disruption, really looking at COVID-19's impact on the Indiana food supply chain. If you haven't yet had a chance to take a look at that research, I think Bridget will type that into the chat. She can make sure that you get a copy of that. It's at agrinovusindiana.com/research. That's agrinovusindiana.com/research. Eager to hear Rob's thoughts on not just what's happening here, our opportunities here in Indiana post-COVID, but opportunities nationally and globally as well. We'll also hear from Dr. Jayson Lusk. Dr. Lusk is also a co-author of the Resilience Through Disruption report. Jayson is an incredible guy. He leads the Ag Econ department at Purdue. He's a distinguished professor. And truly, if there's ever anyone who gets called upon by global media corporations to cast some vision for the future of the food and agriculture industry, it's Jayson Lusk. And Jayson routinely featured on CNN, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, and he's chosen to spend some time with us this afternoon. So really eager to hear Jayson's commentary and really understand what's happening here in Indiana. We'll also hear from Rebecca Schroeder. She's president of Whiteshire Hamroc. She understands the production of the food and agriculture industry, and we're going to ground truth where the opportunities exist in the ag bioscience economy with Rebecca. Rebecca also serves on the AgriNovus Innovation Council. So really excited to hear from Rebecca. Now, the return of Quadrant simply wouldn't be possible without each of you, without your passion, your commitment, your focus on growing this ag bioscience economy we all so dearly love. Really eager to spend some time with you this afternoon. Today also wouldn't be possible without the support of our official media sponsor of Quadrant 2021, and that is Inside Indiana Business. The Inside Indiana Business team with Gary Dick have been tremendous champions of the ag bioscience economy, and they're co-creators of our Ag plus Bio plus Science podcast. If you haven't yet subscribed to that, I would just encourage you, pull out your phone, take it out, go ahead, find your favorite podcast app, whether it's the native or whether it's Stitcher or whatever. Type in Ag plus Bio plus Science, subscribe to that podcast. Gary does an incredible job and really elevating the conversation and having a routine conversation about what's happening here in the ag bioscience industry in Indiana. It's a great podcast and really a great opportunity. Huge thanks to Gary for his support and to the entire Inside Indiana Business team for making Quadrant 2021 by AgriNovus possible. Gary, thank you. Really, really sincerely appreciate it. Now, before we hear from Mark and hear from Nick and our panel, I want to share with you a big announcement about the future of AgriNovus. This is the year that AgriNovus turns 6 years old. In fact, I just joined the AgriNovus team. In fact, this is the first time that I've had a chance to meet and see many of you. I joined the team back at the end of June. It's been incredible. And it's been incredible to continue the legacy that Beth Bechtel created, founding this organization as part of the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. Together, what AgriNovus with you have accomplished over the last 6 years is nothing short of extraordinary. Together, we've built a brand that has become a magnet for innovation and a magnet for the discussion on ag bioscience. Thanks to a partnership with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and global media juggernauts like Forbes, we've really become a place where people make Indiana synonymous with innovation in the ag bioscience. Through our work with research, the research that I mentioned specifically with Ernst & Young and Purdue and many others, we've really created a thought leadership platform to really elevate and continue the discussion around the future of the ag bioscience economy. And our work around talent development over the last 6 years has been extraordinary. If you haven't yet checked it out, please go to myfieldatlas.com. That's myfieldatlas.com. That's a career exploration platform that AgriNovus launched last fall. This is absolutely tremendous. All of us know that the ag bioscience economy is a horizontal, it's not a vertical, meaning that it cuts across so many disciplines of study, it cuts across so many disciplines of practice, that it takes a lot of different kinds of vocations to make this ag bioscience economy work. And our mission, our vision around Field Atlas is to introduce new generations to the opportunities that are the ag bioscience economy. We've talked with great young leaders that are biologists, that are software engineers, that are developers, that are finance majors, that are biologists that you would never think of, or potentially students may not think of an opportunity in the ag bioscience. My Field Atlas is that platform for them to be able to experience that, and then also be able to identify, what do I go study to do that job? The team has done an awesome job with My Field Atlas. You can go to it again, myfieldatlas.com. We also activate that on Indiana colleges and universities, on campuses of Indiana colleges and universities, with what we call the Field Atlas Ambassador Program. This is amazing. These are actually young people, students that we employ, and they serve as our ambassador. So they imagine on college campuses, you have students having conversations with other students. Now, again, these may be finance majors, they may be software developers, talking about this awesome opportunity that is the ag bioscience economy. It's incredible. Together, we have done all of these things. And I will share with you, we have tremendous opportunity to continue to build on that momentum, continue to build on the strength that together we as a community have built. Now, the big announcement is this. Today, I am delighted to share the next chapter of AgriNovus Indiana, the next chapter built around a framework that we call Grow 2024. Grow 2024 is our commitment to add $4 billion to the ag bioscience economy by 2024. I'll say that again. Our commitment, AgriNovus Indiana's commitment to growing the ag bioscience economy by $4 billion by 2024. Now, we arrived at that number, at that goal, through research that we launched last fall with a group called Techonomy Partners. This is the first time that we've used both quantitative and qualitative research to understand the size and scope of the ag bioscience economy. And we found some really interesting pieces. Now, just to sort of level set here and make sure everybody's headed down the same page, the ag bioscience economy in Indiana, according to this research, is a $52 billion industry, $52 billion. We'll break that down a little bit more. 52 billion, 13 billion of that is production agriculture. And so we're left with 39 billion in what we call the innovation platform. That's value-added food nutrition, it's animal health, it's crop protection and plant science, and it's ag tech. Here's where some of the really interesting data comes out, and especially germane to the conversation today as we talk about food. The largest innovation platform, the largest subsector of the ag bioscience economy in Indiana is value-added food and nutrition, that totaling more than $29 billion of direct revenues of companies here. It's incredible. It's more than half of the total overall ag bioscience economy in Indiana. It's more than twice what production agriculture is. That's a staggering stat, and one that, candidly, I think there's a lot of opportunity for those together today as part of the AgriNovus community to really double down on and invest in, and how do we shape the future of what's ahead. Another interesting stat that comes from that research as we look at what sizing of the economy is, the fastest growing category of the ag bioscience economy in Indiana is ag tech, which is incredible given the work and given the strength that we have that's unique here to Indiana. Now, this $4 billion goal, growing Indiana's ag bioscience economy by $4 billion, our Grow 2024 framework, that's not going to happen with AgriNovus alone. That's going to take all of us linking arms, working together to make this possible. Those numbers are revenues of companies operating here. Our commitment is to work with you, to work with partners across the state, around the country, and around the globe to make Indiana the destination for that revenue generating investment. Now, we're going to do that in two real key ways. First, we're going to focus on business growth. That's an area that we've done a great job in. There's more room to be done, working with our partners at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and others. We're also going to focus our efforts on startup acceleration. And how do we really make sure that great young companies here in Indiana have the infrastructure they need to be able to grow and to accelerate and to solve real problems, real challenges, creating real opportunities in the broader ag bioscience economy. And we're going to do everything that we can to continue to build on the strength that we have in that enabling infrastructure, the great work we've done around public education, the incredible work that we've done within talent development, the tremendous work we've done in research. We're going to continue to double down on that to really inform our strategy and to make sure that we collectively have the thought leadership position with you to be able to grow the economy in a way that we know that has to be done. Now, this is a really unique opportunity. The opportunity is before us to seize the opportunity that while great challenges come from COVID, great opportunity comes from COVID as well. And we collectively as a community, I know that we can make that happen. And I know that it can put us closer to our $4 billion Grow 2024 goal. So one key piece of that is shaping the next chapter of our economy. And key to that is great young startup companies. Mark Gramelspacher and the team at Elevate Ventures are doing tremendous work. Again, as I mentioned, they're the most active venture capital firm in the Midwest, doing tremendous work providing risk capital to really great young companies. Mark is going to walk us through what he and the Elevate team are doing and also introduce us to what I think you're all going to love, and that's the work that Nick Carter and his team are doing at Marketwagon. Mark, great to see you, and I'll turn it over to you.
It's great to see you, Mitch. Thanks so much. I have the easiest job on the program today, and it's a jam-packed program. It's a pleasure to represent Elevate Ventures with this group. Many of you know we are a venture development organization that targets innovation-driven enterprises. These are startups or spin-offs that really look to conquer big problems on a global scale. We're an industry-agnostic fund, but we look at IT, life sciences, ag tech, and we recently launched a seed fund for Industry 4.0, which I am the executive director. Industry 4.0 very much belongs in the food supply chain. We look forward to those opportunities. We accomplish our mission by making select investments on the equity side and working directly with entrepreneurs in their teams to help identify and clear obstacles that are in their paths. Usually these are similar to obstacles we've encountered ourselves as entrepreneurs. We make pre-seed and early seed investments, as well as participate in as many Indiana-based growth equity rounds as we can, with total commitment capacity of up to $4 million per company. One of those entrepreneurs we know and admire will be presenting in just a few minutes. Nick Carter is a fourth-generation farmer, and Nick has come to define entrepreneurship in a classic sense, at least in my mind and observation. He walks the walk, he talks the talk. Knowing him 5 years now and having made a very early investment in the idea of Marketwagon, we see his attributes, and those are required for success: resilience, perseverance, high passion for and commitment to Marketwagon. This is an idea that Nick has been working on for many, many years. He's a serial problem solver, starting his first business at 16. And grew up thinking about how to use technology to solve the problem in food supply chain. With the global pandemic, as you will soon learn, his time to shine has come. Without further introduction, I welcome Nick Carter, founder and CEO of Marketwagon. He has a fascinating and exciting story to share on this new virtual version of Quadrant.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Mark. It's really a pleasure to be able to present this to you guys. Marketwagon, as you just saw in that video, is a technology and a logistics platform that takes a farmer's market supply chain and scales it up by using e-commerce as well as last mile logistics technology. The grocery supply chain that we all grew up with is really the evolution of a post-war era innovation. Its genesis was over 80 years ago. And in that time, emerging from a depression and a war rations, the demand centered around cheap and abundant food supply. And to achieve that efficiency before modern technology, the game plan centered on consolidation. Today's food supply relies heavily on aggregators and consolidators at every link in the chain. And it really works well for the most part. So well, in fact, that many people tend to think that anything else isn't scalable. The problem is that today's food consumer is vastly different from the homemaker in a post-war America. Consolidation may make for abundance and efficiency, but it also creates opacity in the supply chain. Meanwhile, the consumers themselves are asking more and more things like, well, where did this food come from? And what was the environmental impact of how it was produced? Consumer trust in our food supply is somewhat eroding. Consumers aren't finding some of these answers in supermarket aisles, and they only get further removed from their food when an e-commerce front end gets bolted onto the old system. In other words, home delivery alone, e-commerce alone is not really an innovative solution. So we developed a technology that allowed us to rethink the way that we source groceries for today's consumer and then do it at scale. We have about 1,300 active producers on our platform today, serving 32,000 customers. That's one food producer for every 24 consumers. A supermarket would typically be supplied at ratios like 1 to 50,000. So we're operating at a scale that actually can allow and foster the kinds of connection and relationships with their producers that consumers are demanding more and more. Our supply chain is direct. All transactions and the interactions, questions, Q&A, chats are facilitated directly between the buyer and the producer. It's distributed. So we could, theoretically, we could supply, for example, all of the egg needs of our entire network right now. We're in 24 or more, I lose count, geographic locations around the Midwest and South. And we could supply our entire eggs probably with one 30,000 bird barn, roughly, but we don't. We have over 150 different egg producers on the platform, each with an average flock size of about 200 birds. And then it's also parallelized at the same time. So that means if you don't find exactly the value proposition that you want from one egg producer, you could find it from a different one. But at the end of the day, it's scalability that matters. This direct local supply chain that we're talking about, it had previously only existed in suboptimal channels like farmers markets or CSA subscriptions. What we've been focused on doing is using our technology and logistics platform to make that supply chain scalable. For 3 years, we grew the company aggressively. In the 12 months immediately prior to the pandemic, we had grown over 200%. And we had launched 6 geographic markets. We were getting better and faster at that rollout process every time. Then, in March of last year, our supply chain, just like everyone else in the grocery industry, got put to the ultimate stress test. In one single week, GMV grew 400%. For a brief peak, we hit 600% pre-pandemic numbers. And through all of that surge, our technology held up, all of our systems worked, and so did that supply chain. As a matter of fact, we were able to rapidly onboard this scalable supply chain, more and more suppliers as the demand skyrocketed because our tech was made for this. E-commerce grocery in the year 2020, estimates that I've seen, it grew between 50 and 100%. So nearly doubled, right? That's great. Ours sustained 400% growth in the same period. What we discovered is that we can scale up faster, this supply chain, because of its parallel distributed nature. We can scale it up faster. We're onboarding now between 30 and 50 new vendors every week on the platform. We're at a really unique point in time today. Typically, the hardest part for any food startup is the fact that grocery habits are so hard to change. Most of us had concreted our grocery buying habits by the time we were an adult. We learned them being pushed around the front seat aisle or the front seat of a cart, right? But e-commerce, it was just $19 billion in 2019. It's going to be several $100 billion this year. It created this inflection point where all the consumers are forced to build new habits. There's this massive unmet need in the marketplace for a totally new kind of food supply that our traditional supermarkets aren't designed to offer. And there's a massive migration of consumers to a completely new mode of shopping. Food has never really been more ripe for a disruptive force like Marketwagon than it is right now. And we are so excited to be here doing this.
Nick, this is incredible. The momentum you have, the work that you've done, the scale that you've achieved is nothing short of extraordinary. I want to go to a couple questions because all of us hear these giant learn more and want to understand more about it. So if you have a question, again, remember over on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a Q&A tab. Type the question in there and we'll make sure we get them over to Nick. Nick, let's take the first one. What customer group, as you look at segmentation, what customer group has really been driving the growth amidst COVID?
It's been, if you want to put labels on it, Gen X and above. And primarily it's been true for the history of the company, because the nature of the kinds of food that we sell, you have to know how to cook. And you also have to know how to do a little bit of meal planning. That's a skill that people in my generation and older learned, and newer generations, younger generations have kind of abandoned some of that for more of the ready to go meal preps. Now we've been working toward getting into that area and innovating in that space, but just by nature of the product that we have to offer, that's been kind of the demographic.
There are a couple questions here around food safety. Let's talk about that. So as you connect production with supply, right? Link supply and demand, how do you tackle food safety?
Yeah, that's a really great question, right? We have to follow all kinds of best practices. We have a SOP that all of our vendors have to follow. We've done extensive research on temperature controls. We've built algorithms around ice packs and how many ice packs are required to keep food at right temperatures during transit. And then as far as food safety outside of our own hands, like what's coming into us, the transparency is really a key driver in that. The fact that there's traceability, that there's knowledge as to who the ultimate food producer was, provides social pressure for healthy food, as well as just easy recall, right? Which we've never had to do, but we have the traceability.
It's fascinating. The research I mentioned at the beginning today around resilience through disruption, that study with Ernst & Young and Purdue, traceability, trackability was the number one recommendation coming out of this. So really glad to hear that's one of the areas you're focused on. I want to hit the one that now has 5 votes, wins against everyone else, is show me the money. Nick, what's it mean for producers?
Yeah. So the question looks like, can farmers make money at this scale, right? And the answer is yeah, absolutely. And so I'll just use myself as an example. Easy one. I also operate a small farm. We have we're double the size of our average flocks. We have 400 laying hens, but also produce. We're diverse and meat as well. And on our farm this year, it's our second year in operation. We will net around 30,000 income. It's 24 acres, 400 hens, 2 acres of produce, and the rest of it's in grazing pasture. That net, by the way, is after we've already paid the labor for a farm hand, a part-time income of a farm hand, and depreciation and all that other stuff. And we're just getting started, right? We're scaling up. So yeah, there's absolutely income opportunity at these scales.
And as you think about that income opportunity, the service opportunity goes with it. Noah has a question here, and I think this is really, really profound. As we look at food deserts, right? The idea of food delivery begins to erase what we define as food desert. Proximity to a grocery store maybe doesn't matter quite as much. How do you see Marketwagon playing in that space of erasure, or at least service to food deserts?
Yeah, in a couple of ways. Well, one you've already hit on, which is it is more economical to handle the last mile through logistics than to fund and build a grocery store in order to be nearby them that may or may not survive, right? So it's way more economical to handle food deserts that way. But on the flip side, the income opportunity of producing food, right? We're now democratizing the opportunity to bring food to market and to use underutilized land resources inside city limits to produce food, create income, and bring it on Marketwagon and bring those people access to a larger market.
Well, Nick, we got time for 2 more questions. Brad has one here, post-COVID. I assume that this is not the first time you've heard this question, but you saw this massive surge of demand amidst COVID. What's the chapter look like next?
Yeah, so of course, when you create an artificial cohort of new customers, as we did during the pandemic, there is every customer has a decay curve. And so we found the bottom of that near the end of Q4. Last year, we've been able to show that the customers that we have stuck, We're getting them into a normal pattern, and we are creating some really impressive growth even today. I don't know if you would consider today post-COVID, but we're able to demonstrate meeting our projections of growth in a world that's not driven by pandemic. We're growing out of, we're growing from the new normal, right? It's stuck. Yeah.
That's great. Habits are powerful things to break, right? And I was talking with a guy sharing my excitement that you were joining us today, and he's like, "Yeah, comes 3 times a week, just like the regular sort of routines," which is really exciting. You know what, Nick? I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to take one more question here before we wrap up this section. On the food desert question, is there an education component? Many in food deserts don't know how to use prepared or how to prepare foods. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, we're aware of it. And similar to what we talked about earlier, who our demographic is, there's a million problems to solve in this space, and we are really, really good at solving one of them. And we know that teaching somebody how to cook a rutabaga needs to happen if they're going to buy it, but that may not be the problem we need to solve. We're going to partner with other innovators in the space to make sure that all the different things are taking place.
Yeah, really smart, really smart. Nick, thanks for spending time with us today. And I will ask the final question. This is an easy one, and this is the layup for you. So Nick, everyone really wants to know how they can stay involved with Marketwagon. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm pretty easy, nick.carter@marketwagon.com. And you can also go to marketwagon.com. I would venture to say that pretty much everyone on this call is going to be inside our delivery radius, and you should check it out. See what we have to offer and get yourself your first delivery. Excellent.
Nick, thank you so much. Congratulations on all your success. Congratulations on the momentum. And most importantly, thank you for doing it here in Indiana. Really, really good to spend time with you this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Absolutely. It is great to see Indiana entrepreneurs doing phenomenal work when it comes to the ag bioscience economy, particularly in that innovative space. Love what Nick is doing. Really fast growing area of the ag biosciences when we think about food delivery. Now let's broaden the conversation a bit. Let's bring in a panel discussion and let's talk about what the opportunities exist for us as an economy. What happened during COVID-19? What opportunities are created today? Let's welcome the panel. I believe that we've made one change. Mark Holland is joining us. Mark is playing the role of Rob from Ernst & Young. Rob is a principal of the Ernst & Young's practice around global ag business, and Mark was instrumental in the study I mentioned earlier, Resilience Through Disruption, a joint report between Ernst & Young as well as Purdue. And Dr. Jayson Lusk, I mentioned him earlier. Dr. Lusk leads the Purdue School of Ag Econ, is distinguished professor and all-around swell fella. Jason, good to see you. And Rebecca, it is good to see you. Rebecca Schroeder is president of Whiteshire Hamroc and is an AgriNovus Innovation Council member. Rebecca, really delighted that you're joining us as well for the conversation. Thank you. So Jayson, you get to be the first one up. So let's talk about this study. Again, agrinovusindiana.com/research. That's where you can find the study. But we set out on a course to really understand what happened to Indiana's ag bioscience economy amidst COVID-19. Share with us, if you will, sort of what was in that research and maybe some key findings from it, if you would.
I think one of the things we did is try to calculate economic impacts and quantify some damages to the state, at least in terms of some of our major commodity crops. So we looked at corn, soybeans, hogs, eggs, dairy. And if you just look at sort of the prices and sales that Indiana Purdue experienced through March, April, May, throughout the rest of 2020, compared to and predicting is risky business, but compared to a prediction of what we think might have happened had COVID not occurred, you add up just those commodities alone, it's a pretty significant dollar amount that we included there in the report. I think about about $500 million or so. So that's one thing, just trying to quantify impacts to producers. The other thing is just trying to characterize a bit of the supply chain that we have here in Indiana in terms of where our products go, where the food we eat comes from. And one of the big take homes for me is how complex that food supply chain is. I think one of the statistics in the report is the number of UPCs in a typical grocery store, about 30,000. Every one of those has its own supply chain, its own unique set of regulations, its own brands, demands, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, we talk about these big disruptions and shifts we have, but there are 30,000 stories to tell about the impacts of COVID on the food supply chain.
Yeah, it's a great point. And panelists, feel free to jump in here. You don't need to wait for me to call on you. Mark and Rebecca, I know neither of you are shy, so feel free to add. I'm going to come to you, Mark, next. And that really is around this idea. We size this ag bioscience economy. We talk about value-added food nutrition. If you could maybe give folks just sort of a Cliff Notes view of what value-added food nutrition is, and if you would maybe transition into that complexity that Jayson talked about. How complex is this food supply?
Well, I actually really like some of what Nick was talking about. The reason how we got here is pretty important. With a post World War II, mass standardization, efficient, and large scale operations to deliver inexpensive and readily available food that we've all just taken for granted, that when you go to the store, it's going to be there. And the only time you have a problem is if there's a, impending ice storm or tornado or something and there's no bread and milk. But that's more about people panicking than it is the supply chain, right? In COVID, we actually had both. We had people panicking and, you couldn't buy a freezer and people were stocking up on, they had 12-year supply of toilet paper. But it is quite complex. If you just think about each thing that you eat and you think about what's required to get that to you, and then we do that in a just-in-time system, which is great. But it's like that supply chain can be like an old set of Christmas tree lights. So like if you have one, you got a problem at this meat processing facility where people get sick and they're running at half or a quarter capacity, it just starts to break down from there. Or the truck drivers aren't available, can't be there, or we shut down interstate travel. One thing will just derail the whole system. And I think we've just seen that in Texas here in the last week.
Yeah.
And so these, it's still the best system on the planet at the moment, but it's going to change, no doubt. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
I know, Mark, you and I have had conversations. Jayson, you and I have as well, around this idea around we created a just-in-time system, right? We kind of borrowed a page from the manufacturing playbook. We all got hyper-focused. We in the value-added food nutrition space all got hyper-focused on how do we take assets off the balance sheet that don't need to be there? How do we make this super precise, super efficient? And that efficiency really cost us amidst the pandemic. And I think that's some of the disruption we saw.
I think that's right. And I don't, I guess I'm the economist on the call, so I'm not going to talk bad about efficiency, but it wasn't, I think it's also important to recognize it wasn't just about efficiency. Some of that just in time was an effort to try to reduce food waste. To talk about perishable food products, you don't want a lot of excess inventory, but I think one of the things, again, that coming out of the pandemic, we have to realize is, it's not all about efficiency. And even when we talk about food waste, there maybe is an acceptable level of food waste we might be willing to tolerate because it allows a little more flex in the system. One way to think about it is it's a form of insurance, that we all pay insurance for, our car or house. And actually, we hope we never have to cash it in, that we don't have to go and collect for it, but it's a cost we pay as we go along to help prevent a much larger loss that could occur. And I think that's one way to view the resiliency in a supply chain is what can we do to build in some insurance, even if it costs a bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Fascinating analogy. Really good. Rebecca, if you would share with us give us a background on Whiteshire Hamroc, and then if you would maybe walk through at the production level, what happened? What did your team see? What did your partners see across your operations?
Sure. Whiteshire Hamroc's traditionally been focused on and oriented toward production agribusiness, but we've always looked for ways to add value to that rather than just focusing on commodity production. We've done that by means of innovating data, science, and service driving our business. We've done that through breeding stock, selling swine genetics, breeding stock, both domestically and internationally. We provide pigs to the medical device industry and research means. We also, of course, have pigs that go into the traditional supply chain for pork. We've been early adapters of precision technology in our row crop and working on environmental management practices that drive sustainability in our row cropping, as well as we have a patented building ventilation system called Airworks that we believe is one of the best in the world in terms of being economically efficient way to raise pigs and get their genetic potential out of them, and helps do that sustainably and efficiently as well. As far as the pandemic goes, we were very lucky. Jayson in the EY study focused on the risks that exist at the farm gate. It's bad enough when you're not in a pandemic. You've got market risk and you've got regulation and trade risks all the time, as well as, with pigs especially, we've got biological challenges. Summer heat in Indiana is devastating often to our being able to consistently supply pigs. Sows don't like to be pregnant when it's that hot, so it costs us down the road. As well as, we've got disease considerations. Pigs are susceptible to disease spread. So you add to that a global pandemic and supply chain issues, it really got ugly in a hurry. A year before the pandemic, we were thinking about supply chain disruptions from foreign animal disease and what would happen if foot and mouth. But that was practice and discussion to have, but of those things, I think, because it impacted all of our producers, so many, rather than just being contained to a region, potentially like you would have pressure such as that, really magnified the impact, especially the pork industry. We were lucky in that we, a couple years ago, looked for ways to mitigate our risk. We've partnered and joined forces with a larger producer in the mash-offs and Acuity Genetics. And we are primarily focused now on driving genetics of that, providing a customizable genetic product to our consumers, whether they be breeding stock for additional large consumers, larger producers, or whether it be more niche producers that are looking to produce to more of a local, or I love the concept of Nick's company and so I think producers moving either to collaborate more with larger systems and see how we can provide flexibility to those larger systems, or else they'll be looking for ways that they can produce locally and tap into the supply chain that exists there.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Rebecca. I know that you've read the study. We've talked about the study, and Jayson and Mark, you were involved in the study. I mean, that you couple what Nick is doing and Rebecca's view of these collaborations and sort of last mile agility. I mean, those are almost pulled from the playbook, right? Of what is it we need to go do? These collaborations that maybe once were thought of as, maybe on the edge of reality are happening, and this new last mile agility with companies like Nick are possible. Jayson, we've not talked about food a lot in Indiana. We talk a lot about production agriculture. We talk a lot about ag tech, even us here at AgriNovus. Share with us, if you will, where do you feel like Indiana has the opportunity to really lead this next chapter of growth, building on the strengths, but what can we do?
Well, I think to maybe convey the opportunity, if you think about when a consumer goes to the grocery store and spends $1, only about a quarter of that is because of what happened on the farm. And the rest, the other 75 cents is all the other stuff that happens in the middle. And so some of that's cost, but a lot of that's opportunity too. And to take those raw commodities, as we've been talking about, Mark mentioned earlier with value add, and really, deliver more value to the consumer that they might be willing to pay for. So what are the opportunities, in the state? I think there are several. One is, I think, as a kind of ag biosciences state that, I think AgriNovus has helped promote, bringing, knowledge, data analytics, to the food supply chain, bringing the science and technology we have to help deliver some of those things that consumers value, I think is a real opportunity. We have a track record in this state, I think, of helping deliver on that front. We are a state that's, I think, broadly known as manufacturing, not so much in food, but, more broadly speaking. But, that's in large part what food processing is. It's manufacturing of food products. And I think applying some of that know-how more often to the food sector is a real opportunity. And look, we're close enough to some big urban centers like Chicago or even the East Coast that we're in the middle of farm country here, but we're close. Speaking of, it's not quite last mile, but just in terms of transportation, I think we have a geographic location that suits itself well to doing that transformation of taking that farm commodity and turning it into something where the mass of consumers actually resides in this country.
Perspective. Mark, Rebecca, any thoughts on that, given your unique points of view?
Well, I mean, your question is, is almost like a now oriented question to some degree. It's hard to think about, pivoting quickly but we're going to move to a system that looks a little different, and there will be opportunities for companies in Indiana as well as other places. One of the things is I think about Indiana is it's actually a relatively attractive place to live. And I think we've all seen, even this meeting that we're having right now on this software pack. I mean, nobody had to travel to go to this conference. And people are going to have the freedom to live in a lot of different places. I think I saw there were 2 companies today that announced that all their employees could live wherever they want. And so that'll change where consumption occurs to some degree, because I'm not sure that it makes sense for some people to commute an hour one way to work. I don't think people are going to go back to that. So I think there'll be opportunities all over the place. It will look different, though. It's not going to be, it won't look exactly like it does today or like it has over my career in agriculture, for sure.
Sure. Rebecca, any thoughts?
Well, I think just the flexibility and space, especially in the livestock industry, that just-in-time mentality. I mean, we've got a whole living being coming in behind consistently. And in the swine industry, we're always 10 months. We've got 10 months in the pipeline. So just that agility and having additional space and flexibility in the system, I think, are really key to being able to be more resilient and sustainable in what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Mark, I want to come back to you. I love the framework that EY has on now, next, and beyond. Apply that, if you would, for folks to the food supply chain, this value-added food nutrition industry. Where do you see sort of this? Where do you see things now, and what do you see happening next and beyond when it comes to this space?
Yeah, so the big themes I would say is that when we called out in the report, as well as moving from mass standardization to more of more customization, and we're seeing that all parts of our lives. At every element of our life. And that will play out in food. And that will have repercussions back through the supply chain. And then, that will lead to, in my personal opinion, more crop diversity on the production side than we have today, which, we really don't have a lot of diversity today. Two primary crops in the core part of the growing part of the country. And I think we'll have more diversity than we do today, which is a low bar, but I think it'll actually be quite a bit more diverse. That's a pretty different, I think when you drive from Indianapolis through through Champaign down to St. Louis or up to Des Moines, I think that drive will look different. And certainly in the beyond time frame, for sure. All these things take time. Obviously, you've got the government involved, which is a player in terms of policy and has something to do with what agriculture looks like. But we've done a lot of scenario planning for clients, and one of the things I have the pleasure and opportunity and to think about the future a lot. Having done that, you can really see where things can, Nick's talking about on his own farm, he's got 24 acres and hens, and he views that 24 acres as this is a viable platform from which that's not, I mean, actually, I think he's right. It's just that that's so counter to what anybody's thought of for a long time. It's not historically inaccurate. I mean, that actually wasn't crazy 50, 60 years ago. It's just, it's very counter to everything we've done in my lifetime, which is just big, 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 big. And it'll be interesting to see where the tension, comes, and there will be tension. There's no doubt about that.
Rebecca, let's build on that with protein. I mean, protein producers, livestock. What's going to happen? What do you look at in the protein production space? You know that better than anybody on this call. But what's that look like? What's the future of that look like? Sort of next and beyond.
Sure. Well, I wish I had that crystal ball, but it sure seems like things are going to have to change. Things are changing, and there's really some positives that the pandemic has brought about. With all challenges, there are opportunities, right? So our industry has been one that's been very driven toward least cost, low cost production, high efficiency, just in time. We've always kind of fought against that. We've kind of fought against, tried the means of, could we create our own branded pork product and sell that locally, and, fought a lot of barriers and costs to entry into some of that. So maybe we were just a few years ahead of our time on some of that, but I think, we've seen tremendous demand put on, local butchers and processors for people wanting to source freezer meat, freezer protein. Again, what is the scalability of that process? I know from the genetic standpoint, we're really looking for ways to customize the genetic services that we can provide to our consumers and to our customers specifically. I think being able to put together a good genetic program and the right kinds of efficient and productive animals for different types of systems. A lot of consumers are wanting animals raised a certain way. Can we as a protein supplier provide the means and the package, the animal on foot that can provide those products and hold up in those types of production systems, whether they be outdoor production systems or penned gestation systems. So I think the consumer will really continue to drive and move the needle on protein production. We're looking always for ways to provide and build that animal from a genetic standpoint, both phenotypically and genomically, to really drive success for those customers.
Love the underpinning of all of that, as you talked about earlier, around data and analytics, right? I mean, that looks very different than most would think of a protein production operation. Key to what you just highlighted is the ability to understand the data and the insights that come from it.
Absolutely. I've always said, or I've said for quite a while, not always, but, we look at the crop production world and the precision technology that they have available. They can zoom in and see exactly what that corn plant in a 1 inch by 1 inch environment, what it needs, what it's received, how it's going to produce, how much sunlight it's received. We still handle a lot of our protein production in lots of 1,000 head or more. I think there's tremendous opportunity for data and science and those data analytics to really hone in on the aspects of precision technology for livestock production. Certainly as far as, labor is a tremendous challenge in this industry. Having skilled labor, the opportunity to automate as much of the process as possible. But gosh, there's just so much still biology and herdsmanship that's needed, especially at the level that we're at, with a lot of attention to detail and individual animal traceability, and making sure that data is correct and it's audited, and having that system in place. So certainly the labor aspect isn't one of the livestock industry that should be overlooked as we talk about sustainability and being able to move the needle.
Feels like a great topic for an innovation challenge.
It does.
Feels like a great topic for an innovation challenge. That's good. That's good. All right. If you have questions for the panelists, we're going to make one more rapid fire round here. If you have questions for the panelists, these are incredible experts in the industry. Be sure, drop your question over in the Q&A box on the right-hand side. Mark, I'm gonna call an audible. I'm gonna start with you.
Sure.
This is a rapid fire round. Jayson and I have a history of not doing these well. They usually last a little longer than they should, but that's okay. So rapid fire, give me one thing you see changing in 2021, and what's that gonna do to the food supply chain?
Oh, wow. In 2021. See, I normally think like beyond 2021.
I know, that's why I'm putting you on the spot. It's good.
Yeah, 2021. Well, unfortunately, I think this is going to last. Some of our restrictions are going to last a little longer than we would like, for sure. But when we come back, like if the fall is when like a new normal, really comes in, I think there could be another rush where like people's activity changes like a lot. And we try to go back to restaurants in mass, and and it could cause some challenges in that, because those chains are made for, and then planned ramp ups like at Christmas or
right.
We know how to do that. And I wonder if we can, in some world where within 2 weeks, it's like, yes, we're free and we're all going to go and have a jailbreak. Yeah, it's that's the other thing is this is definitely one other thing came to my mind is that whether you like it or not, this is the year of the SPAC, and that capital trying to find a home, it's going to be disruptive, and I'm not sure exactly. I don't know what they're all going to buy, to be honest, but it's going to be if you've got a startup or something mid, it's just going to you're either going to take the money or you're going to just be inundated with people trying, wanting you to tell your story or trying to knock on the door. And it's just a lot of capital trying to be placed. And that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Fascinating. Jayson, you're up next. 2021. What's the thing you see?
Yeah, I think a potential big increase in demand from food service, but also internationally. We're seeing it right now through China in particular. I don't think Mark's necessarily wrong. There's a lot of interest in diversification, but that's countering up against the fact that we have some pretty high corn and beet prices at the moment. That's going to actually draw land into those commodities in the near future, at least in the short term. We could see some changes in policy that matter, maybe more focus on conservation practices, a lot of talk about carbon payments, and that could have impact at the farm level, I think.
Really insightful. Rebecca, you want to wrap up the rapid fire round?
Sure. Jayson stole some of what I was going to say. I think there will be more diversity at the farm level, farmers looking for ways to broaden how they use acres. Again, with prices going up, it may deter some of that or push some of it off. But I think farmers that are looking to the future and how they're going to continue to be competitive, we're going to continue to look for ways to collaborate, look for other uses for acres, look for ways to just diversify what they're involved in. Renewable energy. I think there will be some policies that may drive some farm ground to be operated possibly differently, whether that be with the carbon credits or solar or other types of renewable energy that are going to continue to mold and create a landscape for agriculture, both here in Indiana as well as across the state. But again, hopefully we're the ones to innovate the most quickly, and hopefully we make a great impact toward that $4 billion increase by 2024 through the innovation that we do here in Indiana.
That here, absolutely. Agility will win, no doubt. All right, we're going to move to some questions from the audience. Again, if you have questions, that Q&A panel on the right side of your screen is the place to go. We're going to go to the first one. Jayson, why don't you start us with this one? So as consolidation in operations continue, these large food companies are bigger. Can they really be agile enough to sort of match the big behemoth with hyper-personalized service? Does it work?
I'm not sure it's so much an issue of technology as it is culture. That's, I think, often the challenge that the kind of when you've grown large and you're focused on efficiency, it's hard to shift mindsets. So I think it's one of the reasons we've seen even some of the large food players, they've bought, and sometimes they just leave them alone because they don't want to mess them up, and they hope to kind of learn a little bit from them. So it's not impossible, but I think it's more of a cultural issue than a technological issue.
Mark, you've got a question. You mentioned going back to small diversified farms. Are there enough, and are there enough markets to support that type of trend?
So the answer is, I mean, obviously if it happens, there will be. And this is not a now answer. Like this is not about next week. This is about over the next decade. And yeah, there's just, it's, think about where we were 10 years ago relative to beer and the craft, but there were a few brands, a few companies, and I mean, now there's a company and you go through a subdivision, there's 3 companies in garages. So, I mean, that's an example of that's very real that has occurred. And we wouldn't have, if I had predicted that 20 years ago, people would have thought you were crazy.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Last question. Jayson, I'm going to send it to you, and Rebecca and Mark, feel free to jump in on the end of this one. What's the future look like for the future grocery store? I mean, this idea of dark stores is contemplated in the research, the erasure of food deserts contemplated in the research. Jayson, we'll start with you, and Rebecca and Mark, feel free to jump in.
I'm going to steal one of Mark's phrases and say this is not a now answer, but if consumers are buying more online, and probably that will, I think it will include both processed and fresh items, but it'll probably focus more on processed than fresh. So, what does that imply for a grocery store? I think it could imply a grocery store that has a smaller footprint, that's more focused on fresh, less so on processed, because anybody can go online and order from, Amazon or whoever the new emergents, entrants are into that space. So, I think that's sort of one vision for a possible grocery store of the future. But at the same time, these meal delivery kind of services, I've always thought when a grocery store decides to get into that game, they can compete very effectively in that space. So, what's the difference between a restaurant and a grocery store may continue to blur over time, I think. I mean, really a restaurant in a grocery store. Sorry, I thought I misspoke there for a minute.
Really interesting. Mark?
Oh, I was just saying, I was one time I guess it was in the last 60 days, I actually went to the grocery store and I realized I haven't actually been in one for 6 months because everything's come to the house. And just that alone, where consumers aren't walking around in the store, the end cap, it changes the power structure between distribution and the manufacturers. It disrupts that. Just the fact that I'm not going is a big deal. And I agree with Jayson. They're going to have to. It's just a different. That is a now thing. That's happening right now. The fact that people aren't going, and it's changing a lot.
Rebecca, you want to wrap us up? I think Rebecca's frozen. I'll give her another second. Okay, Rebecca's officially frozen. So I'm sure it was profound. I'm sure it was incredibly profound. I think you're back now. I see you smiling, so that's good. Or not. You look like Max Headroom, right? If anybody remembers that from the Pepsi commercials long ago, maybe that's dating me. Yes, we got you. You're back.
That's not a compliment, Mitch.
Okay, Rebecca, are you back with us? No, she's not. All right, friends. Well, please help me thank Jayson, Rebecca, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for playing the role of Rob today. That was good. You did a great job. I'm sure he'll be proud of you. But sincerely, thank you all. The research we talked about today that Mark's team and Jayson contributed to directly, again, available at agrinovusindiana.com/research, agrinovusindiana.com/research. It's called Resilience Through Disruption. Incredible research. Again, thank you for the contribution. Friends, we did it. We pulled off the first virtual quadrant event. We brought it back in 2021, and we heard from really two incredible groups of innovators. We heard from Elevate and Marketwagon with the work that Nick's doing, really fun, really innovative work on the early stage side. And we heard from three industry thought leaders, really looking at the challenges and the opportunities created amidst COVID-19, the global pandemic. And we shared our big goal. We unveiled the big goal together that we will collectively do. AgriNovus will champion our Grow 2024 commitment to adding $4 billion to the ag bioscience economy by 2024. I am elated to have the opportunity to work with you to make that possible. Now, the next step from here is we have to stay connected. If we're not connected yet on social media, please make sure you do it. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is, your favorite platform of choice. We provide a lot of content, the research we talked about. We always share pieces and parts of that research there, so be sure to follow us. And then be sure to put on your calendar May 26th. May 26th will be our next quadrant event. My hunch is it will be it'll be virtual, but we'll see how that goes. So stay tuned. May 26th, please put a placeholder. That afternoon is when we'll have our next quadrant event. So on behalf of the entire AgriNovus team, thanks for being a part of today. We're going to go back to the virtual networking opportunity. Again, click into each other's tables. Let's have a conversation, and let's make this the year that Indiana takes another step forward in leading the ag bioscience innovation economy. Thanks so much for being here. I look forward to talking with you.